every day for 41 days. She danced outside the hospital window, hoping he'd come back to her. Everyone said he couldn't hear or feel a thing. But on day 42, his finger moved. You ever see a little girl dance like the whole world's watching, and she just doesn't care? That was Julia, 10 years old with scuffed sneakers, wild curls, and a heart so full it spilled out every time she moved. But her stage wasn't fancy. It was the cracked linoleum floor of a tiny kitchen in small-town Ohio. And her biggest fan? Her. Dad, Eric, he wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He was just a guy with calloused hands from fixing cars all day, grease under his fingernails, and a quiet ache in his chest that never quite left. See, Eric had once been a breakdancer. Back in the day, he'd spin on cardboard like his life depended on it. But then Julia came along and everything changed. Her mother, gone before she could even form her first memory, a car accident. One that left Eric alone in a hospital hallway, holding a newborn baby in his arm, and no one else. So he danced, not on the streets, not in clubs, but in their home for her, every night like a promise. No matter how hard the day had been, no matter how little money was in the drawer, he'd flip the record player on, scratchy jazz or some old Motown track, and he'd call out, "All right. Julia Book, you ready?" She always was. They twirled between pots and pans, laughed when the dog slid across the tile trying to follow their steps. They had no audience, no routine, just rhythm and love. And if you looked through their kitchen window, you wouldn't see a broken family. You'd see a universe where two people healed each other, one dance at a time. But life has a way of changing tempo, and Julia never saw the moment coming when the music would stop. The morning it happened, the music never started. Julia stood in the kitchen in her socks, waiting, arms already outstretched, expecting her dad to call for their nightly routine. But the house was too still. She found him on the floor, one hand clutching his head, the other stretched toward the record player, as if he'd been trying to reach it. To reach her. The ambulance came fast, lights flashing, neighbors whispering, her heart pounding like a drum that wouldn't stop. They said the word twice before it stuck. Aneurysm. Eric was alive, but barely. Coma. Unresponsive. Julia didn't even understand the word at first, just that her dad wasn't opening his eyes. And the man who danced through storms now lay still under hospital lights, machines breathing for him. She clutched her aunt's hand in the waiting room, surrounded by murmurs and stale coffee. That's when she heard it. It's too late. Even if he wakes up, he won't be the same. They didn't know she was listening, but she heard every word. Her chest tightened. Tears welled. Not because they said he wouldn't make it, but because they said he wouldn't remember her. The nurses wouldn't let her in. ICU, too many risks, too much protocol, flu season, no children allowed. Come back when he's stable, they said. But Julia wasn't the kind of girl who waited for permission. That night, she stood outside his hospital window in the snow, wearing her red coat, wool hat pulled low, and music blasting softly from an old phone in her pocket. And she danced. Right. There, on frozen concrete under a flickering streetlight, she spun and moved and swayed. No stage, no rhythm, just pure heart. Because if her daddy couldn't hear her voice, maybe, just maybe, he could still feel her feet. Every night after school she was back. Wind, snow, rain, didn't matter. She danced through it all. People watched. Some took videos, others just stared, confused. But Julia wasn't there. For them, she was dancing for him. He hears me, she whispered once to the nurse watching from the inside. He always does. And deep inside that hospital room, though Eric's eyes remained closed, his monitors flickered every time the music played. Day 1. Julia stood there, small against the wide hospital wall, her breath turning to vapor in the cold Ohio morning. She wore her red coat, zipped all the way up, a knit hat pulled over her curls, and her worn-out sneakers laced tight. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the chill, but from the fear that clutched her heart. The fear of never seeing her dad's eyes open again, but she didn't let it show. She took a deep breath and pressed play on the small MP3 player in her pocket. The tiny speaker clutched in her hand crackled to life, and the song began, the Same one she and her dad danced to every night before bedtime. Ain't no mountain high enough. She raised her arms and began to sway. The rhythm was familiar. Her feet moved on instinct, not perfection. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was trying to reach someone, just one person, her dad. Inside the ICU window, just past the glass and machines, Eric lay still, unmoving. Tubes and wires surrounded him like vines. His eyes were closed. His chest rose and fell only because of the machine that breathed for him. Julia danced anyway. A nurse passing by on the other side of the window paused for a second. She looked out, confused at first. Then she smiled, just barely. She recognized the girl. The little one who'd been at the hospital every day since her father was brought in. Julia danced for nearly 10 minutes, then walked away without a word. Day 3. Snowflakes drifted from a heavy grey sky. They caught in her eyelashes, clung to her jacket, stuck in her shoes. Still, Julia stood outside that window, alone again. This time she brought a new song, one her dad used to twirl her to when she was only 5. She shuffled her feet, spun in a slow circle, and raised her hands high into the sky. Her cheeks were red with cold, her nose runny, but her eyes still burned with hope. Inside, a few nurses had gathered by the window during their break. One of them whispered, "That's the same girl, 3rd day now." Another added, "She hasn't missed a beat, even in this weather." Julia didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. Her gaze never left the room, never left her dad's face. She danced. Alone. In silence, except for the music and the steady beep of hospital monitors on the other side of the glass. Day 7. Something changed. Julia hadn't even realized there was someone watching from behind a parked news van. A local reporter had come by to do a completely different story, something about winter flu spikes, but he froze when he saw her. A little girl, dancing alone, in the snow, in front of a hospital window. He raised his camera and took the shot. Not staged, not posed, just honest, raw. The headline the next morning read, "Girl dances for her dad every day, hoping he wakes up." The image went viral on the local station's website within hours. People shared it, commented, "This broke me. She's just a child. Please, someone help this family." But Julia didn't know any of that yet. She just showed up again that day. Same time, same song, same dance. Only this time, when she finished her routine, she turned to leave and found a small cup of hot cocoa sitting on the bench nearby. A sticky note clung to it. "Keep going, he hears you." She clutched it tight and smiled through her tears. Day 10. More people came. Not crowds, just 1 or 2 strangers at a time. A woman with her baby in a stroller. A retired man from across town who said he used to dance with his granddaughter. A teenager with blue hair and headphones who just stood nearby and nodded along to the beat. Someone brought a portable speaker, better than her little handheld one. They offered it shyly, like they didn't want to intrude. Julia thanked them with a small nod. She danced again, and again, and again. Sometimes she stumbled. Sometimes she cried while dancing, but never once did she skip a day. Day 14. Vijay. Hospital staff had started calling her the Little Dancer. They made sure the blinds in Eric's room were open every afternoon. The nurses adjusted his bed so he faced the window. One even snuck in a Bluetooth speaker and placed it near his bed. Julia's music now drifted into the ICU. "Maybe she's right," one of the older nurses whispered. "Maybe he can hear her." Day 21. Reporters came back, this time with a crew. They interviewed Julia's aunt, who had been quietly watching from her car. "She just won't stop," she said. "I told her it might not work, that her dad might never wake up, but she told me he's still in there." "I know he is." A video clip aired that night on regional news, Julia twirling in slow motion as snowflakes fell around her. The audio played her voice in a soft interview. "I dance so he remembers how much I love him." People wept in their living rooms. Donations flooded in. Prayers came from everywhere. Day 30. A violinist showed up. He stood off to the side and played live to her dance. A cellist joined a day later. Then a tap dancer from the city came and danced beside Julia. The hospital staff brought out heat lamps. Someone knitted her new gloves, but Julia still danced like it was just her and her dad. Her eyes never left his window. Her movements were still just for him. Day 39. One of the nurses gasped. She'd been adjusting Eric's IV drip when she thought she saw something. A twitch. Just one finger. She leaned in. "Eric, can you hear me?" No reply. No movement. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe something was happening. Day 41. Julia pressed play. She danced slowly this time, almost like a lullaby. She was tired, her body sore, but her spirit still burning. Then, inside the room, his finger moved, then his hand, then his eyelids flickered. The nurse screamed, "Call the doctor, he's responding!" Inside, monitors beeped wildly. Outside, Julia suddenly stopped mid-step. Her aunt came rushing toward her, phone in hand, tears pouring down. "He moved his hand," she said, choking on the words. "Julia!" He moved his hand, and for the first time in 41 days, Julia collapsed, not from despair, but from relief. Day 42. The hospital was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Julia arrived early, wearing the same red coat, her scarf pulled tight, and her speaker clutched in gloved hands. She was ready to dance like she had every other day. But something in the air felt different. Her aunt met her by the bench. They want to talk to us, honey," she said gently, kneeling down. "The doctors." Julia's face didn't change, but her fingers clenched around the speaker. Inside, the medical team had gathered. The lead neurologist spoke carefully, professionally, but the words fell like bricks. There hasn't been significant improvement in Eric's cognitive response. It's been 6 weeks now. The small movement we saw, it could have been reflexive, not intentional. Julia's aunt tried to hold it together. "So what are you saying?" "We're suggesting the family begin discussing long-term care options, or considering letting him go." Julia didn't blink. Her voice came out small but steady. "He moved his hand. He's still in there. You didn't see him when he danced. You didn't see him when he held me." The doctor sighed. "I know this is hard, but brain death is—" "He's not gone," Julia snapped. Her voice cracked. "He's just waiting for the right song, that's all." That afternoon she danced again. She was the only one outside at first. The sky was grey. The snow had melted into slush. Her sneakers were soaked, but she danced anyway. Halfway through the song, a nurse stepped out of the hospital. Then another. Soon 2 kids from Julia's school showed up. A woman from the bakery came, the violinist returned, followed by the cellist, and then a man in a wheelchair joined. His nurse held his arm as he clapped along offbeat. His smile was crooked, his movements slow, but he was dancing, his own way. What had started as one little girl's ritual was becoming something more. A movement. Day 45. Dr. Ramirez arrived. He was new to the hospital. A younger physician, calm-eyed, with a reputation for trying what others wouldn't. He'd read Eric's file the night before, but today he stood beside Julia's father, watching as Julia danced just outside the window. He asked for new scans. While the others were ready to move on, Dr. Ramirez looked deeper. He spotted something unusual. A flicker, not in the motor cortex, not where movement or speech lived, but in the auditory cortex. A pulse, subtle, barely measurable. Has he always shown this kind of response near music? The nurse nodded slowly. Ever since we started playing her songs near his bed. Day 47. Julia sat in the hallway waiting for Dr. Ramirez. Her aunt sat beside her, hand on her shoulder. The doctor approached with a smile. "I spoke with the board," he said. "We're going to allow a one-time exception. You'll be allowed to go into the room just once with your music." Julia's eyes widened. "Really, inside?" He nodded. "Only you, only your music. Just for a few minutes." Tears welled up in Julia's eyes. She looked through the window. "I've been waiting to dance with him again." Day 48. They wheeled in a speaker. Julia stood by the side of the bed. For the first time in weeks, she saw her dad up close. His skin looked pale, thinner, but it was still him. The strong arms that used to lift her in the air, the soft lips that used to hum along to old soul records. She reached down and gently touched his hand. "It's me, Daddy. I'm here." She set the speaker beside his bed and pressed play. The music began. Their song. Julia stood back, took a deep breath and danced. She danced slowly, softly, not for show, not for the cameras, just for him. The nurses stood outside the room. Her aunt covered her mouth, watching through tears. Dr. Ramirez monitored the machines. His eyes flicked between the vitals and the screen. At minute 2, the lines on the EEG monitor began to flutter. The auditory cortex again lit up. More this time. The music was doing something. At minute 4, Julia knelt beside him again. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "If you can hear me, just let me know." She kissed his hand. Nothing. Day 50. The doctors still weren't convinced. They called the response non-conclusive. They used words like anomaly and residual synaptic response. Julia just called it hope, and so she kept dancing. The community kept coming. One afternoon, someone brought a sign that read, "Still dancing, still believing." Another person printed shirts. Even kids from the high school formed a dance flash mob across the hospital lawn. They danced in rain. They danced in sleet. Some came in wheelchairs, others with canes. It wasn't about skill, it was about faith. Julia was always in the center, eyes on the window, feet in motion. Day 55. Dr. Ramirez came into the waiting room looking serious. "We repeated the scans this morning," he said. "The activity is becoming more frequent. It's still localized, but it's undeniable." Julia sat up. "So, what does that mean?" "It means," he said slowly, "that something or someone is fighting their way back." Julia's aunt broke into tears. Julia smiled through hers. "I told you," she whispered. "He just needed the right song." Day 58. The hospital approved regular music sessions. Dr. Ramirez suggested twice a day. Julia was allowed to visit once a week, under supervision. She always chose the same song first, their song. She never stopped dancing. But now she danced, knowing her father was starting to listen. Each time she danced near his bed, the monitors sparked just a little more. One nurse said, "It's like his brain remembers her before his body does." And maybe it did. Day 60. The room was quiet. Julia stood next to the bed. No speaker this time, no crowd outside, just her. She held his hand again. "I think you're trying, Daddy," she whispered. "I think you're coming back. I'll be right here." She hummed softly, and for the first time, his fingers curled ever so slightly around hers. It wasn't reflex. It wasn't spasm. It was a grip. Weak, faint, but real. Julia gasped. Her tears flowed freely. She didn't run for the doctors. She didn't scream, she just held his hand tighter and whispered again, "Keep dancing, Daddy, I'm right here." Day 61. The hospital room was still. Machines beeped softly. The air was heavy with hope, fear, and the faint scent of rubbing alcohol. Eric lay motionless, his face calm but unchanged. Tubes ran from his arms. Monitors glowed blue. Julia stood beside him. Her red coat hung on a chair. Her hair was pulled back. Her sneakers were scuffed and wet from the outside snow. But her eyes, they burned with something no one else in that room had not faith. She set the speaker on the bedside table. Gently, like placing something sacred, she looked at her father. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's our song again." She pressed play. Soft music filled the room. The song that had played in their kitchen every night. The one he used to spin her around to. The one he used to hum when tucking her into bed. Julia didn't start with movement. She just took his hand in both of hers, so small and warm against his large, still fingers. "If you can hear me, Daddy," she said softly, "move your hand." "Just a little, please." She squeezed. Nothing. Not even a twitch. The nurses stood at a distance, holding their breath. Dr. Ramirez stood near the monitor, watching the screen, frowning slightly. The music played on. Julia leaned closer, her eyes beginning to fill. "I've been dancing for you for 60 days, she whispered. "In the snow, in the rain, and I'll keep dancing, forever if I have to. But I just want you to know, I miss you. I miss your voice. I miss your laugh. I miss our kitchen." Still, he didn't move. Dr. Ramirez checked the monitor again. The EEG remained steady. No change, no flicker. The doctor stepped forward slowly. He opened his mouth. "I'm sorry, Julia," he said gently. "We were hopeful, but..." And then it happened. A single twitch. Eric's pinky finger moved. Just barely. Just once. Everyone in the room froze. Dr. Ramirez stared at the hand. The nurse dropped the clipboard she was holding. Julia gasped. Her eyes went wide. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling. His index finger moved next. Then his whole hand jerked, just slightly, but enough. The heart monitor spiked, not dangerously, but differently, like it was sinking to a rhythm long forgotten. Eric's chest rose a little more sharply. His lips began to tremble. Just a flicker, a shadow of movement, but it was real. "Get neuro," Dr. Ramirez called, his calm voice suddenly urgent. A nurse hit the call button. Another began checking vitals. One rushed out of the room, but Julia didn't move. She stayed right there, holding her father's hand with both of hers, tears now falling freely. "It's okay, Daddy," she whispered, voice shaking. "You're doing it. You're dancing back to me." His lips parted. No sound came at first, just a rough breath. Julia leaned in, face inches from his. "Say something," she said. "Please." And then, barely audible, he whispered, "Jules?" Julia burst into tears, collapsing gently against his chest. She shook with sobs, holding his hand like it was her lifeline. "I'm here, Daddy," she choked out. "I'm right here." Eric's eyes fluttered open. They didn't fully focus, but they were open. He blinked slowly, as if adjusting to light for the first time in months. I heard music," he rasped. "You were dancing." Dr. Ramirez stepped forward, stunned. "Eric, can you hear me?" Eric nodded, weak, but unmistakable. Julia held his face in her hands. "You came back," she whispered. He gave the faintest smile. "You brought me back." Outside the room, news traveled fast. Nurses cried. A janitor paused in the hallway to wipe his eyes. One of the volunteers who'd brought Julia cocoa weeks ago fell to her knees in the waiting room and prayed. Word spread across town. The girl who danced for her father. He moved, and not just once. By that evening, he was whispering more clearly, moving his head, responding to the names of friends and songs from his playlist. Eric, the man no one thought would ever wake up, was back. The hospital room was dimly lit. Eric's hand rested on Julia's, their fingers laced together. "I remember some of it," he murmured. "The music, your voice, I couldn't move, but I heard you." Julia nodded. "I knew you could." He looked over at the speaker. The music had stopped. "Can you play it again?" he asked. "Our song." Julia wiped her tears and smiled. "Only if you promise to dance with me again. One day." Eric's smile grew a little wider. "That's a promise." She reached for the speaker, pressed play again, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in over 2 months, they listened to their song together, not separated by glass, not across the lawn, not through wires and hope, but side by side. The morning after Eric first opened his eyes, the room felt different. Hope had returned. Not loud, not fast, but quiet. Patient, like a sunrise inching over the horizon. Eric lay propped up in his hospital bed, pale but awake. His voice was weak, but stronger than the day before. The nurses now smiled when they entered his room. Machines were still connected, but their sounds no longer felt ominous, more like guardians keeping watch. Julia sat curled up in the chair. Beside him, wrapped in a soft blanket someone from the community had gifted her, Eric blinked slowly and turned his head toward her. His lips parted. A whisper. "Did you keep dancing?" Julia looked up, her eyes instantly filled with tears. She nodded quickly, her throat too tight to speak. "Every single day," she finally said. "I never missed one." He let out a faint chuckle, raspy but full of warmth. "You got that from your mom," he murmured. "Stubborn love." Julia smiled through her tears. "No," she said. "I got it from you." Over the next few days, Eric's condition improved steadily. Physical therapy began. The doctors called it a miracle, something they couldn't explain medically but were grateful for nonetheless. Dr. Ramirez later told the local paper, "It was the auditory response that first gave us hope, but what really brought him back was her persistence. That little girl's spirit reached somewhere medicine couldn't." The story spread fast. Local news stations picked it up, then national ones. Little girl dances outside hospital for 41 days. Father wakes from coma, Julia. Became a symbol, not of tragedy, but of unshakable belief. People from around the country sent letters, gifts, and videos of themselves dancing for loved ones who were sick or struggling. Hospitals began to explore music therapy more seriously. Some even opened outdoor spaces where families could connect, safely during strict medical lockdowns. But for Julia and Eric, it wasn't about any of that. It was about one thing: home. Weeks later, Eric returned home, still in a wheelchair, still regaining strength. But he was there, where it mattered most. The first night back, Julia tiptoed into the kitchen. She turned on their old record player. The crackle of vinyl filled the room. Eric rolled himself in, guided by her tiny hands. "You ready, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes glowing. He nodded slowly. "I may not have my moves back yet," he smiled, "but I've still got rhythm." Julia giggled and placed one foot on his as she stood close. Together, they swayed to the music, the same way they used to, father and daughter, in the soft golden light of their small Ohio kitchen. Outside, snow gently fell. Inside, the music played on, a story of love, of defiance, of two hearts that danced their way back to each other, one beat at a time. A few months later, Julia and Eric were invited to a hospital benefit concert for pediatric music therapy. She was asked to say a few words. Nervous at first, she took the stage holding her dad's hand, and in front of hundreds she said simply, "Sometimes dancing is the only way we know how to say, 'I love you,' and sometimes it's the only way to say, 'Don't go.'" The crowd stood, many with tears in their eyes, and as music began to play, Julia and Eric danced one more time. 1 year later, the snow had long melted, but the memory of those 41 days still danced through the town like a familiar melody. Eric was walking again, slowly, carefully, but each step was his. He still went to therapy every week, but now Julia walked beside him, sometimes with a skip in her step, like she was still dancing him forward. Their story had touched more hearts than they could have ever imagined. Local news invited them to a morning show. Eric wore his best flannel, Julia a sparkly red headband. The segment was called "The Dance That Woke a Father." Eric spoke with quiet emotion. "She didn't just wait for me," he said. "She pulled me back with every beat of her little feet, every spin, every song. She was my miracle." Julia just squeezed his hand and smiled. Months later, a children's hospital in Columbus invited Julia to speak at their annual gala. The theme that year was the healing power of music and hope. At just 11 years old, she stood on stage in front of doctors, nurses, parents, and patients. Her voice was small but steady. "I dance because I didn't know what else to do," she said. "I dance because love doesn't always have words." Then she paused, took a deep breath, and with a quiet nod to the DJ, her favorite song began to play. She stepped into the spotlight and danced, just like she had for 41 nights. Only this time, no snow, no hospital window, just love. And then Eric walked out. Not in a wheelchair, on his own 2 feet, he joined her mid-dance, clumsy but grinning hand in hand with his daughter. The crowd stood. Many cried, but Julia didn't notice the applause. She only saw her dad, and together they danced. This was a story from Silent Shift Stories. If it moved you even a little, please like the video, share a comment. We read everyone. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that remind us, even in silence, love speaks loudest.